10-year-old boy crashes his father's car while trying to drive and is stopped by the police. When the officer sees what the boy had inside the car, he panics. The digital clock on the microwave blinked 9:47 p.m. as David Wheeler stared into his third cup of coffee, watching the steam rise in lazy spirals. The kitchen counter was cluttered with the remnants of a hasty dinner. 2 empty microwave mac and cheese containers, a half-eaten apple, and Emma's untouched carrots. He should clean up before leaving, but the text message from the hospital still glowed on his phone. Critical staff shortage. Can you come in early, Dad? Marcus's voice came from the doorway. David turned to find his 10-year-old son standing there in his oversized Burlington Devils baseball t-shirt, clutching a math worksheet. You said you'd check my homework before, right, buddy? I'm sorry, but there's an emergency at the hospital. David ran a hand through his graying brown hair, noting how Marcus's shoulders slumped slightly. Leave it on the counter. I'll look at it tomorrow morning when I get back. Okay? Marcus nodded, but didn't move from the doorway. In the harsh fluorescent kitchen light, he looked older than his 10 years. His mother's dark eyes serious beneath Sarah's characteristic furrowed brow. The same expression she'd worn when concentrating on her crossword puzzles on Sunday mornings, before the cancer. Is Mrs. Peterson coming over? Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. Their neighbor had been away visiting her daughter in Boston for the past week. No, but Aunt Janet. David stopped himself, remembering. No, she's in Seattle for that conference. He checked his watch again. 9:49 p.m. Listen, you're old enough to handle this. Emma's already asleep, right? Yeah, I read her 2 stories. She wanted 3, but I told her you had to work. David felt the familiar twist of guilt in his stomach. He crossed the kitchen and knelt in front of his son, noting how Marcus's socks didn't match, one blue, one white with a hole in the toe. When was the last time he'd done laundry properly? You know the drill, right? Doors locked, don't answer for anyone. The hospital number is on the fridge and 911 for real emergencies, Marcus finished. I know, Dad. I'm not a baby. No, you're not. David squeezed his son's shoulder, feeling the slight tremor there despite Marcus's brave face. You're my responsible young man, just like Mom always said. Remember? The mention of Sarah hung in the air between them, heavy and bittersweet. Marcus's eyes darted to the photo on the refrigerator, Sarah at the beach 2 summers ago, her smile bright despite the headscarf covering her hair loss. David quickly looked away. There's leftover lasagna in the fridge if you get hungry. Don't stay up too late playing those video games. I mean it this time. He tried to sound stern, but Marcus's slight smile told him he wasn't succeeding. It's a school night, Dad. I know. David grabbed his scrubs jacket from the back of the kitchen chair, checking his pockets. ID badge, pen, stethoscope. The familiar routine of preparation helped push down the nagging doubt about leaving the kids alone again. A soft creak from upstairs made them both look up. Emma? David called. She does that sometimes, Marcus explained. Walks in her sleep a little. I always check on her. David's chest tightened. When had his 10-year-old become so adept at parenting his little sister? Sarah would have known how to handle this better. She'd always known what to say, how to balance work and family without everything feeling like it was constantly on the verge of collapse. I'll be back by 8 tomorrow morning. Earlier if I can manage it. David headed for the door, then paused. You can sleep in my bed if you want. Just, if you get lonely. Marcus straightened his shoulders. I'm okay in my room, but maybe I'll check on Emma one more time. The sound of the TV from the living room provided a low background hum, Marcus's preferred white noise since Sarah's passing. Another detail David had somehow missed learning about his own son until recently. As he grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door, David caught his reflection in the hallway mirror. The dark circles under his eyes had become a permanent feature, matching the perpetual stubble. He could never quite find time to shave properly. Sarah would have teased him about looking like one of his patients. Dad? Marcus called just as David opened the front door. Be careful, okay? The words echoed Sarah's usual farewell, and for a moment, David couldn't speak past the lump in his throat. Always am, buddy. Love you. Love you too. The door clicked shut behind him, and David forced himself not to look back at the window where he knew Marcus would be watching. The autumn air bit through his scrubs as he hurried to his car, the motion sensor light casting long shadows across the driveway. In his rush, he didn't notice his phone slipping from his pocket onto the passenger seat, or that it had slid down into the crack between the seat and center console. As he backed out of the driveway, David caught a glimpse of Marcus's silhouette in the living room window, a small sentinel in the night. The boy lifted his hand in a wave, and David waved back, pushing down the constant worry that gnawed at his conscience. They'd be fine. They were always fine. But as he turned onto Maple Street, heading toward the hospital, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was different about tonight. Maybe it was the unusual stillness in the air, or the way the autumn leaves skittered across the road like warning signs. Or maybe it was just the weight of too many nights like this, accumulating like the unpaid bills in his desk drawer and the unanswered messages from Emma's teacher about her adjustment issues. The radio crackled with late-night jazz as Burlington General Hospital's lights appeared in the distance, a beacon drawing him toward another 12-hour shift of other people's emergencies. Behind him, his house grew smaller in the rearview mirror, holding his children and their unspoken fears in its darkened rooms. Marcus stood at the living room window until his father's taillights disappeared around the corner, counting slowly to 60 like he always did. It was a habit he'd developed in the months after Mom died, counting things, organizing them, creating patterns he could control when everything else felt chaotic. The house creaked and settled around him as he moved away from the window, his sock-clad feet silent on the hardwood floors. The TV murmured in the background, some late-night documentary about ocean life that he wasn't really watching. He'd learned that silence made the house feel too big, too empty, especially on nights like this. His math homework lay forgotten on the kitchen counter, the multiplication problems half-finished. Miss Jenkins would understand, she always did when he explained about Dad's night shifts. Sometimes he wondered if the teachers had some special note in their files about him and Emma. Wheeler kids. Mom died. Dad works nights, handle with care. The thought made him straighten his shoulders as he climbed the stairs to check on Emma. He didn't want to be handled with care. He wanted to be strong like Mom had told him to be before. Before the last time in the hospital. Emma's door was cracked open, a slice of hallway light falling across her pink comforter. She'd kicked off her blankets again, one arm wrapped around the stuffed elephant Mom had given her on her last birthday. Marcus tiptoed in and carefully pulled the covers back over his sister, watching her steady breathing. "Mommy," she mumbled in her sleep, turning slightly. Marcus froze, but Emma didn't wake. She did this sometimes, called out for Mom in her sleep. Dad didn't know Marcus had never told him. It would just make him sad, and Dad had enough sad in his eyes already. Back in his own room, Marcus tried to focus on his book, The Hobbit, which his teacher had recommended. But the words kept blurring together, and his mind wandered to the photo album hidden under his bed. He'd been looking at it earlier, particularly the pictures from that last summer at Lake Champlain. Mom had still been strong enough to swim then, her laugh carrying across the water as she taught Emma to float on her back. The house phone's shrill ring cut through his thoughts like a knife. Marcus jerked upright, his heart hammering. 2:17 a.m. glowed on his bedside clock in angry red numbers. Nobody called this late unless something was wrong. Dad always said not to answer the house phone after bedtime, but what if it was the hospital? What if something had happened to Dad? The phone rang again, more insistent this time. He padded down the hallway, glancing at Emma's room. She was still asleep, thank goodness. His hand trembled as he reached for the kitchen phone on its fourth ring. Hello? Is this the Wheeler residence? A woman's voice, unfamiliar and breathless. I'm trying to reach David Wheeler. I'm Barbara Collins, Margaret Wheeler's neighbor. Marcus's grip tightened on the phone. Grandma Margaret? My dad's at work. I'm Marcus. Oh, Marcus. Listen, honey, your grandmother's had a heart attack. The ambulance just took her to Central Vermont Medical. I tried calling your father's cell, but static crackled through the line, garbling Mrs. Collins's words. Hello? Mrs. Collins? Marcus pressed the phone harder against his ear. Which hospital? Is she more static than critical condition? They're saying it's serious. Need to reach your father. The line went dead. Marcus stared at the silent phone, his pulse roaring in his ears. Grandma Margaret was sick, maybe dying, and Dad needed to know. But Dad's phone had gone straight to voicemail when he tried calling, and he didn't know the direct number for the ER where Dad worked. He tried dialing Mrs. Collins back, but got only a busy signal. His hands were shaking so badly now that he almost dropped the phone, putting it back in its cradle. Think, he told himself. What would Dad do? What would Mom have done? That's what you're supposed to call in emergencies. But as his finger hovered over the numbers, doubt crept in. This wasn't his emergency, was it? It was Grandma's, and she already had an ambulance. They'd probably just tell him to call his dad. Besides, he didn't even know which hospital Mrs. Collins had said. Central something? Vermont Medical Center? There were so many hospitals in the area. His eyes fell on Dad's car keys, still sitting in the ceramic bowl by the door where Dad always kept his spare set. 30 miles. That's how far Grandma's house was. He'd heard Dad say it enough times. If he could just get to her house, Mrs. Collins could tell him which hospital, and then maybe he could find Dad. The thought was crazy, impossible, dangerous. Mom would have said it was absolutely out of the question. But Mom wasn't here anymore. A floorboard creaked upstairs, and Marcus's heart nearly stopped. Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, rubbing her eyes. Marcus? Who was on the phone? He opened his mouth to tell her to go back to bed, but the words stuck in his throat. She looked so small in her butterfly pajamas, her dark hair a tangled mess. He couldn't leave her alone, could he? But he couldn't just do nothing while Grandma Margaret might be dying. The car keys gleamed in the bowl, catching the light like a sign. Or a warning. Would you like me to continue with Chapter 3? Was it Daddy? Emma asked, taking another step down the stairs, her small hand gripping the banister. Her stuffed elephant, Mr. Trunks, dangled from her other arm, its once pristine gray fur now worn from countless nights of comfort. Marcus's mind raced. He could lie, tell her it was nothing, send her back to bed. That's what a responsible big brother would do. But Emma had developed a sixth sense about lies since Mom died. They all had, really. As if losing her had made them hyper-aware of anything that felt false or uncertain. It was about Grandma, he said finally, watching his sister's face carefully. She's sick. Emma's lower lip trembled. Like Mommy was sick? The question hit Marcus like a physical blow. No, not like that. It's her heart. They took her to the hospital, but I don't know which one, and Dad's not answering his phone. And he stopped, realizing he was scaring her. It's going to be okay. I'll figure something out. Emma descended the rest of the stairs, her bare feet silent on the wooden steps. She looked at the car keys Marcus had been staring at, then back at her brother. Even at 6, she could read the conflict on his face. You want to go find her, she said. It wasn't a question. Marcus swallowed hard. I have to, Dad would want to know, and what if... He couldn't finish the sentence. What if Grandma died alone, like Mom almost had, if Dad hadn't made it to the hospital in time that last night? I'm coming with you. No. Marcus shook his head emphatically. Absolutely not. You need to stay here and what? Be alone? Emma's voice rose slightly, edged with panic. Like when Mommy left and never came back? The words hung in the air between them, heavy with shared grief. Marcus remembered that day. Dad had left Emma with Mrs. Peterson while he and Marcus went to the hospital. Emma had never forgiven them for leaving her behind, even though they'd thought they were protecting her. This is different, Marcus tried to explain, but Emma was already shaking her head. You can't leave me alone. Her small fingers gripped Mr. Trunks tighter. I won't let you. I'll scream. I'll wake up the whole neighborhood. Marcus knew it wasn't an idle threat. Emma, please. It's dangerous. I don't even know if I can drive properly. Then it's dangerous for you too. Emma's chin jutted out stubbornly, Mom's determination written across her young features. Remember what Mommy said? We stick together. Always. A car passed outside, its headlights sweeping across the living room walls. making both children freeze momentarily. In that brief illumination, Marcus saw the fear behind his sister's brave facade. The same fear that had lived in her eyes since the day Mom didn't come home from the hospital. He looked at the clock. 2:27 a.m. Dad would be in the middle of his shift, focused on other people's emergencies. The phone sat silent, offering no solutions. Outside, the streets would be nearly empty at this hour. If they were going to do this, okay, he said finally, the word feeling like a key turning in a lock. No going back now. But you have to do exactly what I say. And you have to help me. I can't do this alone. Emma's face softened. She crossed the room and took his hand, her small fingers intertwining with his larger ones. I'll help. I'm good at helping. Get your shoes and coat, Marcus instructed, trying to sound more confident than he felt. And grab that blanket from the couch. It might be cold. As Emma hurried to comply, Marcus quickly wrote a note, his handwriting messier than usual with nervous energy. Dad, Grandma Margaret had a heart attack. Mrs. Collins called, but the phone cut out. Going to her house to find out which hospital. Had to take Emma. I'm sorry. Love, Marcus. He propped the note against the coffee maker where Dad would be sure to see it when he got home. Then he grabbed his own jacket and shoes, checking that both were properly fastened 3 times. Another counting ritual that helped calm his nerves. Emma returned, wearing her purple winter coat over her pajamas, the living room blanket draped over her shoulders like a cape. She'd even remembered to put on socks under her light-up sneakers. Sometimes her capability surprised him, though it probably shouldn't. She was a Wheeler, after all. Ready? He asked, picking up the car keys. They felt impossibly heavy in his hand. Emma nodded solemnly. Ready. But Marcus. Yeah. Can you reach the pedals? The question, so practical and innocent, startled a nervous laugh from him. I think so. I've watched Dad drive a million times. It can't be that hard, right? But as they stepped out into the cool night air, the car looming before them like some sleeping giant, Marcus felt the full weight of what they were about to do. He was 10 years old, about to drive a car in the middle of the night with his little sister on board. Mom would be horrified. Dad would be furious. But Grandma Margaret was alone somewhere, her heart failing, and no one was answering their phones. We stick together, Emma whispered, squeezing his hand. Always, Marcus squeezed back, then pressed the key fob. The car's lights blinked in response, like a wink of conspiracy in the darkness. The driver's seat loomed impossibly high as Marcus approached the door. He'd sat there before, pretending to drive while Dad ran quick errands. But this was different. The responsibility felt physical, like a weight pressing down on his chest. Maybe we should, he started to say, but Emma was already climbing into the back seat, arranging her blanket like it was just another car ride to school. You can do it, she said with complete confidence. You're the smartest kid in your class. Mrs. Anderson said so at parent night. Marcus swallowed hard and opened the driver's door. The interior light illuminated the complex array of buttons and dials on the dashboard, suddenly looking far more intimidating than they had during his play-acting sessions. He had to scoot the seat all the way forward before his feet could reach the pedals, and even then he had to stretch. Okay, he muttered to himself. Seat belts first. He checked his own, then twisted around to make sure Emma was properly buckled. Right foot is gas, left foot is brake. Mirror adjustments. He fiddled with the rearview mirror until he could see out the back window properly. The key slid into the ignition. Marcus took a deep breath and turned it. The engine roared to life, making both children jump. The sound seemed impossibly loud in the quiet neighborhood. Marcus quickly turned down the radio, which had started blaring the late-night jazz station Dad always listened to. Now what? Emma whispered from the back seat. Now? Marcus's hand hovered over the gearshift. Dad always did something here, right? The brake had to be pressed down. He stretched his leg as far as he could, pressing the brake pedal to the floor. The gear shift moved smoothly from P to D. The car started rolling forward immediately, faster than Marcus expected. He yelped and slammed on the brake, sending them both jerking forward against their seatbelts. Sorry, he gasped. Too hard. Emma giggled nervously. It's okay. You're doing great. Marcus eased his foot off the brake, and the car began to crawl forward. He turned the steering wheel carefully, remembering to check both ways before pulling out of the driveway. The car moved like a massive, reluctant animal under his inexperienced control. They made it to the end of their street without incident, though Marcus's knuckles were white on the steering wheel. He flicked on the hazard lights, remembering how Dad used them when driving slowly in bad conditions. Which way to Grandma's house? Emma asked. Right on Maple, then left at the big intersection, Marcus recited. He'd memorized the route from countless trips with Dad. Then we follow the highway signs. The car crept along at 15 miles per hour, Marcus too terrified to go any faster. Each approaching vehicle sent his heart racing, but at this hour, the streets were mostly empty. The few cars that did pass them probably assumed they were having car trouble, thanks to the flashing hazard lights. You're doing it. Emma's voice was filled with pride. You're really driving. Sure, Marcus replied, though her enthusiasm helped calm his nerves slightly. I need to concentrate. The dashboard clock read 2:43 a.m. The streets of Burlington were eerily quiet, streetlights casting pools of yellow light at regular intervals. Marcus counted them as they passed. 1, 2, 3. Keeping track helped him focus on something besides his trembling hands. They approached the major intersection where they needed to turn left. The traffic light turned yellow, then red. Marcus pressed the brake too hard again, and the car jerked to a stop several feet behind the white line. Red means stop, Emma announced helpfully from the back seat. Green means go. I know that, Marcus said, but he was grateful for her running commentary. It made this surreal situation feel almost normal, like one of their make-believe games. The light turned green. Marcus checked 3 times in each direction before attempting the left turn. The steering wheel felt huge in his small hands as he navigated the curve, the car swinging wider than he intended. Now we just follow this road until we see the highway signs for Montpelier, he said, more to himself than to Emma. That's where Grandma lives. They passed the closed shops of downtown Burlington, all dark and shuttered. The car's headlights caught the window displays, mannequins and shop signs appearing ghostly in the darkness. Marcus kept checking the rearview mirror, terrified of seeing police lights, but so far, they'd been lucky. Then Emma's small voice broke the tension. Marcus? I need to use the bathroom. The car swerved slightly as Marcus processed this new crisis. Can you hold it? I think so. But how much longer? Marcus did some quick math in his head. At their current speed, maybe an hour? Probably more. Oh, Emma was quiet for a moment. I should have gone before we left. We all should have done a lot of things before we left, Marcus muttered. But there was no going back now. They were committed to this crazy plan. As they approached the highway entrance ramp, Marcus felt a new wave of fear wash over him. The highway meant faster cars, more lanes, more chances for something to go wrong. But it was also the only way to reach Grandma Margaret. We stick together, he whispered, echoing their earlier promise. Always, Emma responded from the back seat, her voice small but determined. The car crawled onto the entrance ramp, hazard lights still blinking steadily, carrying its young passengers deeper into their nighttime adventure. Behind them, Burlington's lights grew dimmer, while ahead, the dark highway stretched out like a river of uncertainty. Officer Michael Sullivan sipped his lukewarm coffee, watching the occasional car pass through the intersection of Main and South Willard. The digital display in his patrol car showed 3:17 a.m., the quietest part of the night shift, when even the college students had mostly settled down. 23 years on the force, and these late hours still felt strange. Ever since Claire had left 2 years ago, he'd volunteered for night patrol. It was easier than lying awake in an empty house, thinking about his daughter Lily sleeping in a bedroom across town, seeing her only on designated weekends. The radio crackled with routine updates, a noise complaint on Pearl Street, a false alarm at the university library. Sullivan logged each one mechanically, his mind wandering to tomorrow's scheduled dinner with Lily. 13 now, and already acting like she had the world figured out better than her old man. Movement caught his attention. A car traveling unusually slowly down South Willard, hazard lights blinking. Sullivan straightened in his seat, professional instincts kicking in. The vehicle, a dark Honda Civic, was moving at what appeared to be less than 15 miles per hour. Dispatch, this is Unit 47. I've got a possible 10 to 51 on South Willard, heading north. Going to check it out. Copy that, Unit 47. Sullivan pulled out behind the Honda, maintaining a distance. No obvious signs of intoxication. The car was moving slowly but staying perfectly centered in its lane. Almost too perfectly, as if the driver was being extraordinarily careful. He ran the plates quickly. Registered to a David Wheeler, Burlington address. No outstanding violations. The hazards were on, suggesting mechanical trouble, but something about the situation felt off. Sullivan flicked on his lights. Not the siren. No need to wake the neighborhood if this was just someone having car trouble. The Honda immediately began pulling over, the brake lights flashing several times as if the driver was having trouble modulating the pressure. Dispatch, traffic stop on South Willard near Maple. Plate number Victor Tango 7249. As Sullivan approached the driver's side, his flashlight beam revealed something that made him stop mid-stride. The driver's head barely cleared the steering wheel. "What in the world?" he muttered, quickening his pace. The window rolled down with a mechanical whir, and Sullivan found himself staring at a boy who couldn't have been more than 10 years old. The child's face was a mixture of terror and resignation, his hands still gripping the steering wheel at perfect 10 and 2 positions. "License and registration, please," Sullivan said automatically, then immediately felt foolish. I don't have a license," the boy replied in a small voice. "I'm Marcus Wheeler. This is my dad's car." Sullivan's flashlight beam swept the interior of the vehicle, catching movement in the back seat. A little girl in pajamas and a winter coat looked back at him, clutching a stuffed elephant. "Hi," she said, giving a small wave. "I'm Emma. I had to come because we stick together. Always." 23 years on the force had prepared Sullivan for many things, but finding 2 children out for a drive at 3 in the morning was not one of them. Protocol dictated he should call it in immediately. Possible parental neglect, endangerment, the whole works. But something in Marcus's expression made him pause. "Want to tell me what's going on here, son?" Marcus's lower lip trembled slightly, but his voice remained steady. "Our grandmother had a heart attack. Mrs. Collins called but the phone cut out, and Dad's at work but he forgot his phone at home, and we didn't know what else to do. We left a note," Emma added helpfully from the back seat. "On the coffee maker." Sullivan shone his flashlight on the center console, noting a crumpled piece of paper with what appeared to be a phone number partially written on it. Next to it lay a worn photograph of an elderly woman surrounded by Christmas decorations, her smile matching Emma's. "Your father's at work?" Sullivan kept his voice calm, professional. "He's a nurse at Burlington General," Marcus explained. "Emergency room. Night shift. We tried calling but—" The boy's voice cracked slightly, and Sullivan saw his hands tighten on the steering wheel. In that moment, he wasn't seeing a traffic violation or a potential crime scene. He was seeing himself at that age, the night his own mother had her first stroke, the helplessness of being too young to do anything but wait. "Okay," Sullivan said, making a decision that would either be the best or worst of his career. "Here's what we're going to do." Officer Sullivan motioned for Marcus to slide over to the passenger seat. The boy hesitated, his hands still frozen on the steering wheel, as if letting go might shatter what little control he had left of the situation. "It's okay, Marcus. I'm going to help you," Sullivan said softly, opening the driver's door. "But first, I need to understand exactly what's happening. When did Mrs. Collins call?" As Marcus carefully unbuckled his seatbelt and scooted over, his voice trembled. "About an hour ago. She said Grandma was taken to Central Vermont Medical. But then the phone cut out and—" "Central Vermont Medical?" Sullivan interrupted, his expression changing. He pulled out his radio, then stopped. "Hold on." He reached for his patrol car's computer, fingers flying across the keyboard. Marcus and Emma watched in tense silence, the patrol car's blue and red lights painting their faces in alternating colors. "Dispatch, this is Unit 47. I need a status check on a patient admitted to Central Vermont Medical within the last 2 hours. Name is Margaret Wheeler, cardiac case. The radio crackled with static before a female voice responded. Stand by, Unit 47. The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Emma had crawled forward between the seats, still clutching Mr. Trunks, her small face pinched with worry. Unit 47, confirming patient Margaret Wheeler was admitted at 0147 hours. Currently in emergency surgery. Listed as critical condition. Sullivan's face grew grave. He keyed his radio again. Copy that. Dispatch, I need you to contact Burlington General ER. Looking for Nurse David Wheeler. Priority message regarding family emergency. Marcus's breath caught. Is Grandma going to? Hey, look at me. Sullivan turned to face both children. Your grandmother is getting the best possible care right now. But there's something you need to understand. What you did tonight, driving this car. I know you were trying to help, but you could have been seriously hurt. Or worse. We didn't know what else to do, Marcus whispered, tears finally spilling over. Dad always says family takes care of family, and after Mom. He stopped, unable to continue. Sullivan felt something in his chest tighten. He'd seen the subtle signs. Both kids in nightclothes, no mother present. The way Marcus carried himself like someone used to bearing adult responsibilities. The radio crackled again. Unit 47, Burlington General reports David Wheeler is currently in trauma surgery. Cannot be reached immediately. Emma made a small, frightened sound. Like when Mommy was in surgery? Marcus reached back and grabbed his sister's hand. No, Em. Dad's not sick. He's the one doing the surgery. He's helping people. Sullivan watched this interaction, years of police experience warring with parental instinct. Protocol said he should take the children to the station, call social services, file a report. But looking at these kids, their fierce determination to reach their grandmother, their obvious fear of being separated, he knew there had to be a better way. Dispatch, Unit 47 requesting supervisor authorization for emergency transport of 2 minors to Central Vermont Medical, family critical care situation. Will need additional unit to secure civilian vehicle. There was a longer pause before the radio came to life again. Unit 47, Sergeant Cooper authorizing transport. Unit 23 en route to your location for vehicle security. Thank you, Marcus breathed, relief evident in his voice. Don't thank me yet, Sullivan said, though his tone was gentle. We're going to have a very serious conversation with your father about tonight. But right now, let's get you to your grandmother. Safely. As they transferred to the patrol car, Sullivan noticed Marcus glancing back at their father's Honda, guilt written across his young face. The car will be fine, Sullivan assured him. Officer Chun will make sure it gets back to your house. Right now, I need you both to buckle up and tell me everything you know about your grandmother's condition. As they pulled away from the curb, lights flashing but siren silent, Sullivan caught Emma's eye in the rearview mirror. Your elephant's name is Mr. Trunks, right? He asked, remembering her earlier introduction. Emma nodded solemnly. Well, Mr. Trunks should know he's riding in a real police car now. That's pretty special. A ghost of a smile crossed Emma's face. The first Sullivan had seen all night. Unit 47 en route to Central Vermont Medical, he reported, then added more quietly. Sometimes the right thing and the wrong thing look an awful lot alike. Don't they? Marcus, staring out the window at the passing night, whispered back, that's what Mom used to say. David Wheeler's hands moved automatically as he sutured the laceration on his patient's forehead. His movements precise despite the exhaustion weighing on his shoulders. The ER had been chaos since he'd arrived. A multi-car pileup had brought in 8 trauma cases, and they were still short-staffed. Dr. Martinez, patient's pressure is dropping. A voice called from behind the curtain. Need you on this, Wheeler, Dr. Martinez said as she rushed past. Soon as you're done there. David tied off the last stitch, quickly checking his work. Almost finished. 2 minutes. The overhead speakers crackled. Nurse Wheeler to the charge desk. Nurse Wheeler to the charge desk. Urgent. David frowned, glancing at the clock. 3:47 a.m. Nobody called nurses to the desk during trauma unless his heart stuttered. The kids. I need someone to finish here, he called out, already pulling off his gloves. A younger nurse stepped in immediately, and David was moving, pushing through the double doors toward the desk. Nancy, the charge nurse, held out a phone. Her face told him everything he needed to know before she spoke. Burlington PD on the line. It's about your children. The receiver felt like lead in his hand. This is David Wheeler. Mr. Wheeler, this is Officer Michael Sullivan. Your children are safe. I need you to hear that first. David's knees buckled slightly, and he gripped the desk. What happened? Where are they? I found them about 20 minutes ago. They were trying to drive to Central Vermont Medical. Sir, your mother was admitted there with a cardiac event. What? David's voice cracked. My mother? What do you mean they were trying to drive? The officer's voice remained steady, professional. According to your son, they received a call from your mother's neighbor about a heart attack. When they couldn't reach you, Marcus, well, he made a decision. Not a good one, but an understandable one, given the circumstances. David's mind raced, trying to process too many crises at once. His mother, the kids, the car. Sir, Sullivan continued, I'm transporting them to Central Vermont Medical myself. Your mother is in surgery right now. The children are scared, but otherwise fine. A commotion erupted behind him, monitors beeping, voices raised. David turned to see Dr. Martinez gesturing urgently. Wheeler, we need you now. David pressed his free hand against his forehead, the world spinning. I can't. I'm in the middle of multiple traumas. I can't leave. Dad? Marcus's voice suddenly came through the line, small and frightened. I'm sorry. I know it was wrong, but Grandma, the sound of his son's voice, so young, yet trying so hard to be brave, broke something inside David. He thought of Sarah, what she would say, what she would do. Dr. Martinez, he called out, his voice carrying across the ER. Family emergency. I have to go. Martinez looked ready to object, then saw his face. She nodded once, sharply. Go. We'll manage. Back into the phone, David spoke rapidly. Marcus, listen to me. Stay with Officer Sullivan. I'm leaving right now. Tell Emma. Tell her I'm coming. What about your patients? Marcus asked, and David felt tears sting his eyes at his son's constant concern for others. Some things are more important, David said, already pulling off his scrub top. I love you both. I'll be there as fast as I can. As he rushed to his locker, David's mind flashed to Sarah's last night, how he'd almost missed saying goodbye because of a trauma case. Never again, he'd promised himself then. Never again would work come before family. Time to keep that promise. The waiting room at Central Vermont Medical Center hummed with the familiar sounds of any hospital at night. The soft beep of distant monitors, the squeak of nurses' shoes on linoleum, the muted conversations at the reception desk. Officer Sullivan sat between Marcus and Emma. His usual commanding presence softened as he helped Emma complete a word search puzzle he'd found in his patrol car. Try looking diagonally, he suggested, pointing to the page. Sometimes the tricky ones hide that way. Marcus sat perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the double doors leading to the surgical wing. Every time they swung open, he tensed, then slumped back when another stranger walked through. The clock on the wall showed 4:23 a.m. Your dad will be here soon, Sullivan said, noticing Marcus's anxiety. It's about a 40-minute drive from Burlington, and he left just before 4. As if summoned by the words, the waiting room doors burst open. David Wheeler stood there, still in his scrub pants and a hastily thrown-on t-shirt, his hair disheveled and eyes wild. Daddy! Emma launched herself from her chair, the word search forgotten. David caught her in his arms, lifting her up and holding her tight against his chest. His eyes sought out Marcus, who hadn't moved from his chair. Marcus, David's voice broke on the name. The boy stood slowly, his face a mixture of relief and fear. Dad, I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have. David crossed the space in 3 long strides, pulling Marcus into the embrace with his free arm. For a long moment, The three of them stood locked together, Emma's small sniffles the only sound. "Mr. Wheeler?" They turned to find a doctor in surgical scrubs standing nearby, her face showing the careful neutrality that medical professionals perfect over years of delivering both good and bad news. "I'm Dr. Patel. Your mother is out of surgery." David's arm tightened around Marcus. "How is she?" "The surgery was successful. We placed 2 stents to clear the blockages. She's stable, but the next 24 hours will be critical." Dr. Patel's eyes moved to the children. "She's being moved to ICU. Family can visit briefly, one at a time. Can we see her?" Emma asked in a small voice. Dr. Patel smiled gently. "Let's give her a little time to rest first. Why don't you all take a moment to catch your breath? The cafeteria is open if you need coffee or snacks." As the doctor left, Officer Sullivan stood. "I should file my report. But first, Mr. Wheeler, could we speak privately?" David nodded, setting Emma down carefully. "Kids, stay right here. I'll be back in a minute." They moved to a quiet corner of the waiting room. Sullivan's face was sympathetic but serious. "Legally, I should be filing charges. Child endangerment, operating a vehicle without a license. The list is pretty long." David's face paled. "Officer, please. They were just trying to—" "Let me finish." Sullivan held up a hand. "I'm not going to do that. But this can't happen again. Ever." He pulled out a business card. "My daughter is 13. After her mother and I separated, she tried running away to her grandmother's house. Kids do desperate things when they're scared of losing family." David took the card, his hands trembling slightly. "Thank you for finding them, for bringing them here, for understanding?" Sullivan smiled slightly. "Just make sure they have a better emergency plan next time. And Mr. Wheeler? Get a backup phone." As Sullivan left, David returned to his children. Marcus had pulled his chair closer to Emma's, their shoulders touching as they shared the word search puzzle. "We need to talk about what happened tonight," David said, taking the seat across from them. "But first, I need you both to know something." He leaned forward, making sure he had their full attention. "I am so sorry I wasn't there when you needed me." "It's not your fault, Dad," Marcus said quickly. "You were helping people. That's your job." "No," David shook his head. "My job is being your father first. Everything else comes second. I forgot that for a while, but I won't anymore." Emma looked up from her puzzle. "Is Grandma going to be okay?" "I hope so, sweetheart. The doctors here are very good at what they do." He reached out and took one of their hands in each of his. "But no matter what happens, we stick together. Always." Marcus's fingers tightened around his father's. "That's what Mom used to say." "Yes, she did," David smiled sadly. "And she was right. Just maybe next time stick together without Grand Theft Auto." The weak attempt at humor broke the tension. Emma giggled, and even Marcus managed a small smile. "Now," David continued, "who wants to help me raid the cafeteria? I hear hospital pudding cups are universal currency among kids in the know." As they stood to leave, David caught Marcus in another quick hug. "We're going to be okay," he whispered. "All of us." For the first time that night, Marcus believed it. The sky outside the hospital windows had begun to lighten, the first pale hints of dawn seeping through the darkness. David sat between his children in the ICU waiting room, both of them finally dozing after the night's ordeal. Emma's head rested in his lap, while Marcus leaned against his shoulder, fighting sleep even now. "You can rest," David said softly. "I'll wake you if anything changes." "I'm not tired," Marcus mumbled, though his eyes kept drifting shut. Through the ICU window, David could see his mother's room. She looked small in the hospital bed, surrounded by monitors and tubes, but her color was better than he'd expected. Dr. Patel had been cautiously optimistic during his brief visit. The surgery had gone well, and Margaret Wheeler was proving to be as stubborn about recovery as she was about everything else in life. "Your kids are something else." David looked up to find Officer Sullivan approaching with 2 cups of coffee. He'd stayed well past the end of his shift, making calls and smoothing things over with the department. "Here," Sullivan offered one of the cups. "Hospital coffee. Almost as bad as police station coffee, but it does the job. Thank you, David said, carefully shifting to take the cup without disturbing the children. For everything, Sullivan settled into the chair across from them. In 23 years on the force, I've seen a lot of kids in bad situations make bad choices. But this, he gestured to Marcus and Emma, this was different. They could have been killed, David said, the reality of it still making his chest tight. Yes, Sullivan agreed. But they weren't trying to run away or cause trouble. They were trying to hold their family together. He paused, studying his coffee. Sometimes love makes us do crazy things, especially when we're too young to know better. Marcus stirred slightly. Dad? Right here, buddy. Is Grandma still okay? She's doing well. The doctors are taking good care of her. Marcus nodded, his eyes still closed. Like you take care of people? The question hit David hard. He thought about all the nights he'd left them, all the school events he'd missed, all the times he'd chosen his patience over his own children. I'm going to request a transfer to day shift, he said, the decision crystallizing as he spoke. It might mean a pay cut, but you can't. Marcus's eyes opened fully now. Your patients need you. You need me more, David replied firmly. And after tonight? Well, let's just say I got a wake-up call I couldn't ignore. Sullivan smiled. Speaking of wake-up calls, I should head home. My daughter will be waiting for our breakfast date. He stood, stretching. Mr. Wheeler, the department will be in touch about some mandatory family counseling sessions. Consider it a condition of our alternative resolution to tonight's events. David nodded. We'll be there. And Officer Sullivan? If you and your daughter ever want company for breakfast, I might take you up on that, Sullivan replied. After all, Mr. Trunks here seems like excellent company. He gently patted Emma's stuffed elephant, which had fallen to the floor. After Sullivan left, David sat in the growing morning light, holding his children close. Through the window, he could see his mother's vital signs on the monitors, steady, strong, fighting, just like her grandchildren. Dad? Marcus's voice was heavy with approaching sleep. I really am sorry about the car. David pressed a kiss to his son's head. I know, buddy, but you know what? The car doesn't matter. You and Emma, you're what matters. Always have been, always will be. As his children finally drifted into real sleep, David watched the sun begin to rise over the Green Mountains. Somewhere in the hospital, his mother was healing. Somewhere above, Sarah was watching over them all. And right here, in this moment, he had everything that truly mattered held safe in his arms. 2 weeks later, David stood in his mother's kitchen, watching through the window as Marcus helped Emma climb the old maple tree in the backyard. The autumn air was crisp, filled with the sound of leaves crunching and children's laughter, sounds that had been too rare in their lives lately. They're good kids, Margaret said from her position at the kitchen table, where she was supposedly resting but actually trying to sneak another cookie. Her color was better, and she'd regained much of her usual spirit, though the collection of pill bottles on the counter served as a reminder of how close they'd come to losing her. The best, David agreed, moving to intercept the cookie-reaching hand. And you're supposed to be watching your diet. Margaret gave him a look that reminded him instantly of being 10 years old himself. I survived a heart attack. I think I can survive a chocolate chip cookie. That's exactly the kind of logic Marcus used about driving my car, David said dryly, but he pushed the cookie plate closer to her anyway. Outside, Emma had successfully reached the first big branch, with Marcus spotting her from below. They were both wearing the bright red safety helmets that had been part of Officer Sullivan's unofficial recommendations during their first family counseling session last week. You know, Margaret said, dunking her cookie in her tea, Sarah would be proud of them. Terrified by what they did, but proud of why they did it. David's throat tightened. I know. I just wish that you could have been there. Margaret reached across the table and patted his hand. David, honey, you can't be everywhere at once. But you're making changes. That's what matters. She was right. His transfer to day shift had been approved, starting next month. They'd installed a new home phone system with backup power, programmed with every emergency number they might need. Mrs. Peterson had given them a spare key, and Aunt Janet had rearranged her business travel schedule to ensure she was in town more often. But the biggest changes weren't the practical ones. The doorbell rang, and Emma's voice carried through the open window. "They're here." David went to answer the door, finding Officer Sullivan Michael now, and his daughter Lily standing on the porch. Lily held a covered dish that smelled suspiciously like her father's famous apple crisp. "Hope we're not too early for Sunday dinner," Michael said. "Perfect timing," David replied, stepping back to let them in. "Mom was just about to pretend she wasn't going to help cook." "I heard that," Margaret called from the kitchen. These Sunday dinners had become their new tradition, born from a night of crisis but growing into something healing. Lily, at 13, had taken both Marcus and Emma under her wing, showing them her collection of books and teaching them card games that somehow always ended in fits of giggles. As they all gathered in the kitchen, Margaret directing traffic from her chair, Michael and David attempting to coordinate their cooking efforts, the kids setting the table between bouts of chasing each other, David caught himself listening for Sarah's laugh, as he often did in moments of family joy. Instead, he heard Marcus explaining to Lily about his new responsibility chart, which included a section for acceptable emergency protocols and ways to help Dad remember his phone. Emma was showing Michael her latest art project, a crayon drawing of a police car with what appeared to be an elephant driving it. "Dad," Marcus called out, "can we eat in the backyard? Like a picnic?" David looked at his mother, who nodded encouragingly. "Why not? It's a beautiful day." As they carried plates and dishes out to the old picnic table, David watched his children, how Marcus automatically reached to help Emma over the slight step, how she immediately saved him the biggest piece of apple crisp. They moved in sync, like partners in a dance they'd been practicing all their lives. "They stick together," Michael observed, coming to stand beside him. "Always, always," David confirmed, remembering Sarah's words, now carried forward in their children's hearts. "It just took me a while to remember that. Together includes me too." The autumn sun painted everything in warm gold, and somewhere above them, a flock of geese headed south, their calls echoing across the clear sky. Emma was teaching Mr. Trunks proper picnic etiquette while Lily and Marcus debated the merits of various superhero powers. Margaret watched it all with the contented smile of a grandmother who knew just how precious these moments were. Life wasn't perfect. There would still be challenges, still be moments of missing Sarah so deeply it hurt to breathe. But they had built something new from the pieces of their broken hearts. A family that extended beyond blood, bound together by love, understanding, and the kind of courage that sometimes looked like foolishness until you understood its source. And if, sometimes, David caught Marcus studying his car keys with a thoughtful expression, well, they were working on better ways to be heroes. Together, always.